All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and welcome to Straight Talk, another episode that is just going to be mind blowing. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of one thing that you have to be truly careful about what is going on with the One African passport. Brothers and sisters that are turning in, I guess, the American passport for one that is African, they're getting their bank account frozen, meaning that your citizenship will be confiscated, will be ended. If you're getting any kind of benefit from Africa, I mean from America, you better make damn sure that your, you know, way of life will be sustained in Africa if you so decline or inclined to go there. So it's very important to understand what is going on and how that is being worked out. And if you can afford it, go for it, but don't go there thinking, getting away from America. Because America got one for you. They're going to raid, they're going to seize your assets or whatever the case may be, because you are declaring yourself to be non-American and African in origin, I guess, with that passport of one African passport. So be careful about that. So tonight we're gonna go. I have to go. I have to apologize for last night. Man, I was just out of it. I just had to take a break for last night and transfer it over tonight. So we're looking at some hellified things that's going to be going on, or what that is going on the continent of Africa, and what that means for the diaspora worldwide. So tonight we're not going to hold any fuss or discuss or um, you know um, hold back. We're going to get right into this because I really want you guys to understand what is going on. Hold on for a minute. What is going on? How we can circumvent the situation as it moves forward, and the voice of the black man will be that voice that will never be shot down ever again. Because from this day forward, the black man and woman's voice will never be shut down or shot down. The world must listen, and the world must do what the fuck we want them to do. The white boy has no way, no how, no common sense to do the right thing. And this is why he's losing. Evil will always destroy itself in the end, and those who partake in it always and always ALWAYS and in always ALLWAYS. All right, so that's a given. And so as this world changes from this pale skin bullshit boy, what you're going to see is the reclamation of black supremacy, black superiority, and black dominance around the world. Not only economically starting out, because we are the richest people in the world, but that economic power translate into policies, laws, and regulations that will allow us to do what we need to do in order to tighten the grip around the neck of these fools, all right? So it's happening. It's not if it's going to happen, it is happening. So as we move forward, I want you guys to be aware of what is going on, how we can further uh, consolidate our power. Just that simple. So we're going to go into the first one. The first one is called One Africa Government cancels all foreign military agreements. Soldiers ordered to leave all foreign powers. So any foreign power, America, France, Europe, whatever the case may be, China, it's over. And the continent is awake, and we are serious about our shit. Not only shutting down these foreign entities and former colonists or colonial playbook, but also getting back on the throne and telling these motherfuckers to get out and give us our fucking money. We're not asking you for the motherfucking money. or a reparation, we're taking the bids, all right? So let's go.
Shock. One Africa government cancels all foreign military agreements. Soldiers ordered to leave immediately. By Tukunamabika, Supreme Africa Breaking News, ABN. Tisu Vanhu Vacho. Today, we are talking about one of the most historic, dramatic, and flat-out gutsy moves Africa has ever made. Forget slow diplomacy. Forget press conferences where leaders smile and say nothing. This is the political equivalent of standing up in a toxic relationship and saying, pack your bags. You've got 7 days, and I want my hoodie back. What happened? According to a highly placed AU insider, you know him, you love him, General Umoja from the One Africa government's Military Integration Task Force, Africa has just canceled every single foreign military agreement on the continent. We're talking the US, France, China, Russia, Turkey, everyone. Soldiers have been given immediate orders to vacate African soil. Part 1. The secret Addis Ababa meeting that changed everything. Our story begins 3 nights ago in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The AU headquarters looked quiet from the outside, but deep inside the African Security Wing, a different story was playing out. A Red Seal Continental Sovereignty Session was called, an emergency, closed-door gathering of all regional military chiefs, security ministers, and the One Africa government's top strategic advisors. General Umoja tells us, this wasn't planned for months. It was an emergency response to new intelligence that confirmed what many leaders already suspected. These foreign forces were not just here to help us fight terrorism. They were gathering data, mapping our resource routes, and even influencing political decisions in our capitals. The vote? Unanimous, except for 2 abstentions, both from smaller coastal nations dependent on foreign naval support. But the momentum was unstoppable. The decision was stamped under the African Sovereignty and Defense Act, a new legal framework that, for the first time in AU history, allows continental orders to override national agreements in matters of security. Part 2. The list and the shockwaves. Let's be clear. This decision didn't just target 1 or 2 countries. The internal memo, leaked to SABN, lists over 50 foreign military installations currently operating in Africa. Examples include Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, the U.S. Navy's only permanent base in Africa, French bases in Niger, Chad, Gabon, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Chinese base in Djibouti, Turkish military training mission in Somalia, Russian facilities in Central African Republic and Sudan. The order? Immediate cessation of operations. Foreign personnel must be out within 7 days, with escort provided by regional One Africa Army commands. Part 3. The real trigger. Why now? Our other insider, Chairman Shadow, says the breaking point came after a classified AU counterintelligence report revealed that at least 3 foreign bases had been running undeclared surveillance programs on African ministers and AU officials. These were not rogue soldiers, Chairman Shadow insists. These were official intelligence operations disguised as counter-terrorism efforts. It was a sovereignty breach at the highest level. Even worse, the report alleges that resource transport routes for rare earth minerals in East and Central Africa were being monitored, not for African benefit, but to secure supply chains for industries in the West and Asia. Part 4. The military reaction. The One Africa Army wasted no time. Just hours after the vote, armored convoys rolled toward key installations. In Kenya, One Africa forces were spotted near the Manda Bay airfield, a known U.S. drone operations hub. In Senegal, AU-flagged vehicles entered the outskirts of a French training camp. General Umoja says, "We are not here to fight them. We are here to escort them home. They came in as partners. They will leave as guests, but they will leave." Foreign commanders are reportedly on non-stop calls with Washington, Paris, and Beijing. In one French base, a frustrated officer was overheard saying, "We have years of agreements. They can't just rip them up like this." Well, mon ami, they just did. Part 5. The public announcement, or lack of it. Here's the twist. As of now, there is no public AU statement. Why? According to insiders, the strategy is to act first, announce later. One Africa government wants foreign soldiers gone before the media storm hits. The official announcement is expected 14 days from now, by which point most troops will already be in the air heading home. This is not a Twitter-friendly move. This is a chessboard masterstroke. Part 6. The historical context. This is not the first time Africa has pushed back against foreign military presence. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have all expelled French forces in the past 2 years. But this is the first time the entire continent, through the AU framework, has acted together. It's worth remembering that many of these bases date back to colonial and Cold War arrangements, where African nations traded security assistance for influence, aid, or infrastructure. The problem? Those arrangements outlived their usefulness and, in many cases, became tools of geopolitical manipulation.
Don't buy another pair of glasses until you've seen what this new invention can do. These self-adjustable glasses.
Part 7. The economic angle. Here's where it gets spicy. By removing foreign military forces, the One Africa government also cuts off the free access those forces had to African airspace, ports, and intelligence channels. African leaders see this as a step toward protecting Afro-gold trade routes, which will become critical once the continental gold-backed currency launches in 2026. Chairman Shadow explains, "You cannot have a sovereign currency when foreign militaries can seize your gold shipments, monitor your financial transactions, or influence your defense policies." Part 8. The civilian reaction. Already, news of troop movements is leaking on social media in several countries. In Djibouti, residents posted videos of long military convoys passing through the city at night. In Niger, groups of young people gathered near a French base, waving AU flags and chanting, "Africa for Africans." Of course, not everyone is cheering. Some fear the sudden exit of foreign forces will leave security gaps, especially in regions battling insurgencies. The AU insists those gaps will be filled by regional One Africa Army brigades, which are already being deployed. Part 9. The global backlash. Diplomatic sources in Europe and the US are furious. Expect emergency sessions in NATO and the UN Security Council in the coming days. Already, whispers of economic retaliation, tariffs, aid cuts, sanctions are floating around Western capitals. China's reaction is different, less angry, more calculating. Beijing is reportedly seeking clarification on whether its Djibouti base will be treated the same as Western installations. AU insiders say the answer is yes. Part 10. The road ahead. This move will either go down in history as the moment Africa took full control of its security, or as a high-risk gamble that leaves parts of the continent vulnerable. But make no mistake, the One Africa government just sent a message so loud that even the Pentagon, Elysee Palace, and Zhongnanhai heard it without turning on CNN. And to my fellow Africans watching this, let me leave you with this thought. For decades, foreign soldiers have been the landlords of African soil. Today, the tenants serve the eviction notice. This is Takunda Mabika, SABN. And as always, Tisu Vanu Vacho.
All right. So we are on track to not only having our sovereignty on the continent, but our sovereignty globally. That says a lot, you guys. It says that we are not playing. That when we tell a motherfucker to sit down, they sit down, be quiet, and at the end of that conversation, you just get your fucking ass up and do what the fuck we tell you. Period. So, let's see. So we're gonna go on. We don't have that many today. I just really wanted to focus in on the most important one. And this one deals with emergency. One Africa government seizes all Western media offices, BBC, CNN, routers, shut down in Africa. Let's get it.
Emergency. One Africa government seizes all Western media offices, BBC, CNN, Reuters, shut down in Africa. By Takuna Mabika, Supreme Africa Breaking News. Tisu Banhu Bacho. The day has finally arrived. If you're watching this from Johannesburg, Lagos, Nairobi, Cairo, or even Accra, grab your tea, your popcorn, maybe your neighbor's popcorn too. Because the story I'm about to drop is the kind of thing that makes presidents lock their office doors and whisper to themselves, Aish! Africa is serious now. Part 1. The leak that set the continent on fire. According to two highly placed insiders, one from the One Africa government's Information Security Commission, and another from the Continental Special Threat Council, a top-level directive has been signed authorizing the immediate seizure of all Western media offices operating in Africa. Yes, you heard me. BBC, CNN, Reuters, Sky News, Bloomberg, gone. Offices padlocked, satellite vans immobilized, the stories they were about to publish confiscated for investigative review. But here's the part they won't tell you on any press release, because there won't be one. This was done without a single public announcement, no parliamentary debate, no grandstanding on social media. This was a silent, coordinated strike across all 55 African capitals at the exact same time. Part 2, how it went down, minute by minute. At precisely 05 Continental Time, teams from the One Africa Securitas, OASS, backed by elite officers from Shadow Unit Zulu, moved into position. In Nairobi, CNN's Africa Bureau woke up to find every staff member escorted out by uniformed officers. In Johannesburg, BBC reporters were given 1 hour to gather personal items and leave. In Cairo, Reuters satellite feeds were physically disconnected from their rooftop dishes. The instructions were uniform: shut down transmissions, confiscate equipment, secure archives, detain any staff suspected of coordinating foreign propaganda operations. Part 3, the trigger event. Nobody saw coming. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Sources tell SABN that a classified UN memo leaked to the AU last month revealed that certain foreign media houses had been sharing sensitive political and economic intelligence with Western governments. One insider, speaking on condition of anonymity, said the report was the smoking gun African leaders had been waiting for. According to the leak, during recent Afro-Gold currency negotiations, real-time updates from inside AU meetings were allegedly being transmitted to European embassies, not by spies in trench coats, but by journalists holding microphones. Part 4, the billionaire backup plan. Here's where it gets interesting and believable. The AU isn't just shutting the doors, they're replacing them. 4 African billionaires have allegedly been approached to fund AfriNews, a new pan-African media network to take over where BBC and CNN once dominated. Patrice Motsepe, South Africa, infrastructure and corporate funding. Mike Adenuga, Nigeria, telecom and satellite coverage. Mohamed Dewji, Tanzania, East African expansion and digital platforms. Strive Masiiwa, Zimbabwe, internet backbone and content delivery. AfriNews will allegedly broadcast in Arabic, French, English, Kiswahili, and Portuguese, with additional local dialect channels planned. Part 5, how the streets reacted. In Nairobi, taxi drivers were blasting local radio stations and shouting, "At last, we tell our own story." In Lagos, university students started trending hashtags like "Bye Bye BBC" and "CNN No More." But not everyone is cheering. Foreign embassies are reportedly furious. One European ambassador, speaking to a journalist friend of mine in Addis Ababa, allegedly said, "This is the most hostile act against press freedom we have ever seen from the AU." Part 6, Information Sovereignty Bill, the real play. This operation is actually part of a bigger law quietly passed in Addis, the African Information Sovereignty Bill. Key points from the leaked draft. 1. No foreign-owned media company can operate without 51% African ownership. 2. All foreign media content must be hosted on African servers subject to AU oversight. 3. Any media house found interfering with African political stability can be expelled within 24 hours. In other words, if you want to talk about Africa, you'll have to do it from Africa under African rules. Part 7, the military angle. Here's the part the mainstream won't dare touch. This wasn't just journalists and security guards. This was military-level execution. OASS field teams were backed by intelligence units from the One Africa Army, who secured transmission hubs, internet exchange points, and even submarine cable landing stations. Why? Because when you control the narrative, you control the battlefield. Part 8, Comedy Break. Because this is Say-Ben. Let's just be honest here. Somewhere in London, a BBC executive is pacing his office right now, saying, "How dare they do this?" Meanwhile, African leaders are sitting in Addis sipping Ethiopian coffee, replying, "We just did." I mean, if CNN really wants back in, maybe they can apply for a job at Afri News and start with the Kiswahili weather report. Leo, yuakali, lakini habari kali zaidi ni kwamba hatuko CNN tena. Part 9, the risk factor. But this move isn't without danger. Shutting down foreign media could trigger Western economic sanctions targeting African media, tech, and telecoms, cyber retaliation from Western intelligence agencies, covert funding of opposition media inside Africa. One insider at the AU Cyber Division told me they are already expecting a surge in fake news sites masquerading as local outlets, but funded from abroad. Part 10. The African public opinion. Public sentiment appears divided. Pro-ban view. Foreign media have been undermining Africa for decades. Time to tell our own story. Anti-ban view. Without multiple perspectives, African media could just become state propaganda. Even in WhatsApp groups, the real Parliament of Africa, the debates are wild. Some see this as the final step toward information freedom. Others fear it's the first step toward censorship. Part 11. The next 7 days. Watch this space. According to our insiders, Western governments have been given a private ultimatum. If they want their media back in Africa, they must sign a new AU Media Accord guaranteeing no political interference, no funding of local political movements, full transparency on editorial funding sources. If they refuse, AfriNews launches in 90 days with a budget of $4 billion and offices in every African capital. Part 12, final word. From Takunda Mabika, Africa is finally doing what the West has done for centuries, controlling the story. For years, Africa has been a backdrop in someone else's documentary. Now we're holding the camera. So to BBC, CNN, Reuters, I say this with love. You can still watch Africa, but from your living room in London, Atlanta, or New York.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know what's going on, then I will try to lean into it and allowing things to take its final shape. Because this is mind-blowing. Having control of the pen, to be able to report your own narrative that is based in truth, righteousness, and justice, rather than a bunch of fucking boys and girls talking shit and don't know what the hell they're doing and talking about. You see white folks at its highest level. All they do is lie, scheme, and connive. To try to get this, to try to get that, to try to do this, to try to do that. And then it's not working. It never works. But the lie has to be exposed and be seen as it is. It is a method of control. And when you have control over your own narrative, what's being seen, what's being read, what's being heard, it's a whole nother world. Welcome to the black domination. And so we're going to, I'm going to make sure I get this the way that I want it. Hold on. And okay, so here we go. So now, hoping that you guys can see that the world is changing and fading back to black. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Money talk, bullshit walk, and when you have money, you can control the policy, laws, and regulations that are and will be prominently featured and talked about and done to the fullest extent that will allow the people who are in control to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and how they want to do it. And that's Black Power 24/7, 365. So with that being said, let's move on to One Africa government declares colonial era land leases void. Foreigners have 7 days to leave. I'll be right back.
Breaking. One Africa government declares all colonial era land leases void. Foreigners have 7 days to leave. By Takunda Mabika, Supreme Africa Breaking News. Tisu Banhu Bacho. If you're hearing this, you're sitting in the front row of African history. Part 1. The leak from Addis Ababa. Inside the marble corridors of the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, where every whisper can change the fate of a continent, a tense closed-door meeting has just concluded. According to a confidential dossier obtained by SABN through our AU insider, Chairman Shadow, the One Africa Government Council on Land and Natural Resources has voted, in principle, to declare all colonial-era land leases null and void. Yes, that means any contract signed under British, French, Portuguese, Belgian, German, or Italian colonial law is about to be tossed into the diplomatic shredder. The motion, pushed forward by a coalition of 15 African states, is being called the most aggressive land sovereignty move in modern African history. And it comes with a warning. Foreign landholders will have 7 days to leave once the law is enacted. Part 2. Why now? The Trump factor. The timing is no accident. In the same week, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order that shook African diplomatic circles. Citizens from Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe applying for U.S. visas must now pay a $15,000 refundable bond before being granted entry. The U.S. State Department says it's about reducing overstay risks. African leaders see it differently. In the words of one senior AU diplomat, this is humiliation diplomacy. They want to price Africans out of opportunity, so we're pricing them out of Africa. Several presidents privately urged a measured response, but others, led by Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traore, South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, and Tanzania's Samia Suluhu Hassan, argued for a decisive, symbolic, and irreversible retaliation. Part 3. The heart of the plan. The plan targets land leases issued before African independence, which in many countries run 50 to 99 years, some even longer, and allow foreign nationals or companies to control massive tracts of farmland, tourism areas, and mining concessions. These include Oppenheimer Family Trust holdings in Botswana and Namibia, Lonrho, UK-based, tourism leases in Kenya and Malawi, Sokfin Agricultural Company, Luxembourg, controlling thousands of hectares in Sierra Leone and Cameroon, Glencore Agriculture, Switzerland, leases in Zambia and DRC. But it's not just faceless corporations. Real people with real power will be impacted. Among those likely to be affected, Patrice Motsepe, South Africa, via minority stakes in foreign-controlled mining joint ventures that operate on long-term colonial leases. Mohamed Dewji, Tanzania, whose agricultural partnerships with European firms depend on 99-year lease frameworks. Isabel dos Santos, Angola, with tourism and luxury resort holdings structured under Portuguese-era land deeds. Yassine Mansour, Egypt, controlling agribusiness projects in Sudan under British-era agreements. Samaila Zubairu, Nigeria, financier of multinational mining infrastructure tied to colonial concession maps. Part 4, the 7-day clock. Here's the part that's making embassy hotlines ring off the hook. Once the law is passed, foreign owners have exactly 7 days to vacate their properties. Not 7 weeks, not 7 months, 7 days.
All right.
The AU's Land Sovereignty Secretariat has already drafted an eviction enforcement protocol that will authorize regional police forces, backed by the One Africa Army, to reclaim properties. According to Protocol Black, another SABN insider embedded in AU security planning, they're not going to kick out every foreigner living in Africa. This is about strategic land. The mines, the fertile plains, the wildlife parks, the coasts. They want that back under African hands before 2026. Part 5.
When I started drinking warm water to help my
Hold on.
prostate, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw I no longer ran to the back,
How they'll justify it. Legally, African legal scholars inside the AU have been quietly building this case for years. The legal backbone? The doctrine of reversion of colonial assets, an argument that colonial powers unlawfully acquired land through coercion, war, or unequal treaties. By declaring those leases illegitimate under the One Africa Sovereignty Act, the AU can reset ownership to the state and redistribute to African citizens or governments. To make it bulletproof, the AU plans to classify the reclaimed land as strategic national assets, offer token compensation to avoid accusations of outright expropriation, establish an Afro-gold-backed land bank to manage redistribution and investment. Part 6. Who's fighting back already? Even before the official announcement, Western embassies are moving. According to Chairman Shadow, the British High Commission in Pretoria has already requested an emergency AU-UK bilateral meeting. The French ambassador to Senegal reportedly called the move economic war. Meanwhile, in Washington, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is preparing a white paper warning that foreign divestment could accelerate in Africa if the law passes. And big corporations? They're mobilizing lobbyists in every African capital where they operate. Lonrho Group executives have already flown to Nairobi. Glencore lawyers are camped in Lusaka. European agribusiness boards are holding midnight Zoom calls. Part 7. The internal split. Not every African leader is on board. Countries like Morocco, Ghana, and Kenya are urging a phased approach, offering foreign companies the chance to renegotiate under African terms rather than face eviction. But the hardliners, led by Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and Mali, say any delay will give corporations time to pull assets, hide profits, and fight in international courts. One AU delegate put it bluntly, if we blink now, we lose everything. Part 8, the security dimension. Make no mistake, this is not just a legal move. It's a military-backed operation. AU security planners have already assigned One Africa Army contingents to each regional bloc to stand by for enforcement. In southern Africa, ESAC Command Group Bravo is on standby in Botswana. In West Africa, ECOWAS Regiment Delta has been briefed. In East Africa, ESF Task Unit Lion is rehearsing rapid property seizures. These are not random deployments. They're the same units that have been rotating through peacekeeping hotspots, and they know how to move fast. Part 9. What happens to the land? The land won't just sit idle. According to the AU's draft plan, the first wave of reclaimed land will be allocated to 1. State-owned agricultural projects to boost food security. 2. National mining companies to replace foreign operators. 3. Tourism enterprises run by African consortiums. 4. Youth agricultural co-ops backed by Afrogold financing. Patrice Motsepe is reportedly already positioning his African Rainbow Minerals company to bid for new concessions once foreign owners are removed. Strive Masiyiwa is exploring a tech-enabled land registry to manage ownership transparently. Mohamed Dewji is said to be in talks with the Tanzanian government to expand domestic grain exports once foreign-controlled estates are reclaimed. Part 10. Why this could change Africa forever. If this goes through, Africa will have achieved something no other continent has done in modern history. A continental-scale reclamation of land from foreign control in one coordinated move. It's risky. It will provoke lawsuits, sanctions threats, and diplomatic battles. But as one AU legal advisor told SFN, they can sue. But where will they sue us? In their courts? We have our own now. The move is expected to be tabled for a final vote at the next AU Extraordinary Summit in Addis Ababa within 60 days. And if it passes, the countdown begins. 7 days. The sound you'll hear then is the sound of history changing.
All right, you heard it here. So we don't have that many left. I chose the ones that really spoke to me, and I'm hoping that it will speak to you guys. That black folks are not playing anymore. We know white folks ain't shit, never have been shit, never will be shit. They're just shitty. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take it. We're going to take our reparation. We're not asking these motherfuckers for shit in the world because they ain't really got shit. They took it illegally and sold the mother continent, which is the diaspora, are bringing these motherfuckers, France, the United States, Great Britain, Germany, all of these companies, all countries who did wrong by the mother continent and by its children in the diaspora, are going to have to pay up, period. All right? So the next video is called One Africa Parliament Just Declared Colonialism a Crime. Trials to begin. I'll be right back.
Breaking. One Africa Parliament just declared colonialism a crime. Trials to begin. By Takunda Mabika. Supreme Africa Breaking News. Tisu Vanhu Bacho. Part 1. The door that wasn't supposed to open. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. A Tuesday afternoon that was supposed to be routine. Delegates from across the continent were meeting in the African Union Parliament's main chamber. Outside, journalists were waiting for the usual press release, some recycled statement about trade cooperation or cultural exchanges. But according to SABN's highly placed insider, what happened behind those tall oak doors wasn't just history in the making. It was history standing up, wearing dark shades, and telling the world, we're not playing anymore. A special emergency session had been called. Only regional governors, formerly known as presidents, and a select group of legal advisors were allowed inside. The guards at the door were not the usual parliament security. They were from the One Africa Continental Guard, black berets, no smiles, and eyes that scanned everyone like they could read your criminal record from 50 meters away. Our insider says the meeting agenda had one explosive line item. Vote on the African Historical Justice Act, a bill that would officially declare colonialism a crime under the One Africa Constitution, opening the door to continental trials against individuals, corporations, and even foreign governments accused of benefiting from it. Part 2. The silence before the storm. The insider describes the room as dead silent before the vote. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the shuffle of documents, the occasional cough from a delegate who probably wished they'd stayed home. At the front sat AU President João Lourenço, flanked by Chief Justice Amara Diop and Secretary General Kwame Adebayo. In front of them, a single folder with the One Africa emblem, gold lion, rising sun, olive branches. Inside that folder, the final draft of the bill. When the Secretary General read out the opening clause, it hit the room like a thunderclap. Colonialism in all its forms, including economic exploitation, cultural erasure, and resource theft, is hereby declared a crime against the peoples of Africa. This law applies retroactively from January 8, 1884.
Boom.
Yes, you heard that right. Retroactively from the Berlin Conference that chopped up Africa like it was a pizza nobody paid for. Part 3. The legal trap that's about to snap. The retroactive clause is not just symbolic. According to documents seen by SABN, it is the legal key that will allow African prosecutors to go after historic crimes that still have living beneficiaries. That means families of former colonial governors still owning African land, foreign companies holding mining licenses traced back to 1900s concessions, banks still managing trust funds set up from colonial resource sales. Our insider says the legal team has already drafted a list of 312 cases ready to be opened once the law is enacted. Names on that list are not being shared publicly yet, but let's just say there are some very expensive suits in London, Paris, and Brussels that just started sweating. Part 4. The vote that changed the room. The vote was not televised. There was no press conference. According to our source, the delegates voted by raising their regional emblem plaques. It wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. Out of 55 regional governors, 49 voted yes, 4 abstained, and 2 voted no. The abstainers? Sources say they feared economic retaliation from former colonial powers still providing them with development loans that smell suspiciously like interest-bearing chains. The no votes? Let's just say they came from leaders whose national GDP is basically one big foreign mining project. When the results were read out, the AU president did not smile, clap, or make a speech. He simply signed the bill into law and passed it to Chief Justice Amara Diop, who slid it into a black leather case. Part 5. Trials in Waiting. Here's where it gets interesting. According to internal memos leaked to SABN, the AU is preparing 3 separate trial tracks. 1. Corporate Accountability Tribunal, for companies still exploiting African resources under colonial-era contracts. 2. Historical restitution court for families and estates still holding African assets acquired through colonialism. 3. Cultural reparations board for the return of stolen artifacts, documents, and intellectual property. These trials will be conducted under the new One Africa Justice Code, which merges existing African legal frameworks into a single continental standard. Our insider says the first high-profile trial is already being prepared. And while the defendant's name is locked in a secure vault, the charges involve over $14 billion in stolen gold shipments from West Africa during the early 20th century. Part 6.
What if I told you you could supercharge your streaming setup with just $15 a month? Let me show you.
The billionaire factor. Now here's the twist most people won't see coming. This isn't just a legal crusade, it's also being backed by some of Africa's wealthiest business figures, but not the same names you hear in every headline. While Strive Masiyiwa and Aliko Dangote are aware of the process, our insider says the quiet money is coming from Patrice Motsepe, South African mining magnate funding historical land recovery litigation. Isabel dos Santos. Despite her controversies, she's allegedly bankrolling the Cultural Reparations Board's operations. Mike Adenuga, Nigerian telecom tycoon, providing secure communications for investigators. These billionaires aren't doing it for charity. Each stands to benefit from a more controlled African resource market once foreign influence is legally dismantled. Part 7. The diplomatic earthquake. Foreign embassies have already picked up whispers of the vote. According to the insider, at least 3 European ambassadors have requested urgent clarification meetings with the AU Legal Affairs Office. One diplomat reportedly asked if this meant their country could be summoned to an African court. The reply, according to our source, if the evidence points to you, you'll get your invitation. Part 8. The Secret Witness Protection Program. You think this is just about paperwork? No, my friend. The AU has also activated a witness protection program for African historians, archivists, and former corporate employees willing to testify. According to SABN's intel, protected witnesses are already being housed in undisclosed locations in Namibia and Ghana. Some are reportedly holding documents that could rewrite African economic history. Part 9. What happens next? In the next 90 days, the AU will publish the official One Africa Crimes Against Humanity docket, serve legal notices to targeted corporations and individuals, begin asset freezes on contested properties and accounts. If successful, this law could become the largest legal reclamation project in modern history, not just for Africa, but for any formerly colonized region. Part 10. The final word from the inside, as one senior AU legal advisor whispered to our insider while leaving the chamber. This is not revenge. This is correction. A stolen century must be accounted for. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you are hearing it here first, from inside the room where the continent just decided to put colonialism itself on trial. Tisu Banhu Bacho.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are pretty much down to the last 3 videos, and if you don't know what's going on, I will tell you. Black power is what's going on. Black economic power, black political power, black spiritual power, and physical power is being multiplied times 1 million to the 10th degree, however you want to put it. And it is just phenomenal that everything is being put on display. Our power is here, and it's getting better and better and better every day. So with that being said, let's move forward and let's see what's going on or what had going on in New York.
One Africa Army just surrounded United Nations headquarters in New York. By Takun Mabika, Supreme Supreme Africa breaking news. Tisu Banhu Bacho, the front row seat is here. You're seeing this before the world even understands what's happening. Part 1. The arrival that froze Manhattan. At exactly 8:32 a.m. New York time, the quiet morning hum around the East River stopped dead. Not because of a parade, not because of a protest, but because over 60 African military officers, dressed in tailored Navy ceremonial uniforms, stepped out of a line of sleek black SUVs that had just swept down First Avenue. Each vehicle had tinted bulletproof glass, and if you were close enough, you could see the gleaming gold AU emblem on the side doors. The convoy halted right outside the United Nations headquarters, that tall glass skyscraper every news channel uses as a background for serious world stories. Within minutes, the African soldiers were positioned in a protective semicircle around the entrance, and from street level, it looked like the building had just been taken over. Part 2. Why they were there. This wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a coup in the middle of Manhattan. It was something more calculated, and possibly more historic. An official One Africa government military delegation had flown into New York for an urgent, behind-closed-doors session with the UN Security Council. Their mission? To demand a permanent African seat on the UN Security Council, something African leaders have been calling for since the 1960s, but never pushed this hard for, until today. And let me tell you, when Africa finally pushes, it doesn't send a polite email, it sends its generals. Part 3. The delegation. The delegation was led by General Umoja, the retired now serving as AU security advisor, and General Nkosana Dlamini, head of the One Africa Strategic Operations Command. Alongside them were Ambassador Fatima Doumbia, AU Special Envoy to the UN, Chief Colonel Adebayo Falola, Logistics Commander for the One Africa Army, Protocol Black, the anonymous AU meeting technician who hears everything. This wasn't just military muscle. This was a strategic blend of diplomacy and intimidation. Part 4. Why the security looked like a siege. Now here's where the headlines were born. The One Africa delegation's security detail was enormous. Over 120 elite soldiers, including members of the One Africa Special Protection Group, trained in Ethiopia, Algeria, and South Africa. New York police had been told in advance, expect heavy African military presence. It's for protection. But here's the twist. Half the protection team stayed outside the UN building, forming a visible wall around it. From the outside, it looked like the UN was under African control. From inside, it was just standard VIP protocol, or so they said. Part 5. The symbolism. According to Chairman Shadow, our AU insider, open quote, the decision to bring such a visible force was intentional. They wanted the world to see that Africa is not begging for a seat anymore. They're arriving as equals, as a power, close quote. The message was clear. Africa will not ask politely for representation in decisions that affect its 1.5 billion people. It will show up with its own army and demand it. Part 6. The American reaction. U.S. security services weren't exactly thrilled. The Secret Service, NYPD counterterrorism, and UN security scrambled to coordinate protocols the moment they saw the African formation. One unnamed U.S. official was overheard muttering, "It feels like they're daring us to say no." And honestly, they might be right. This wasn't just about getting into the Security Council. It was about showing the world that Africa can project power anywhere. Part 7. Inside the meeting. Just took over the UN. Should I drive to New Jersey? A street hot dog vendor tried to sell African special hot dogs to the soldiers. No one bought them, but the photos went viral. one African soldier was spotted explaining to a group of tourists that no, they weren't invading. They were just protecting important people. The tourists asked if they could take selfies. The soldier said yes. 3 minutes later, the selfie was online with the caption, "Africa just liberated Manhattan." Hacked Part 9.
Hold on, I'm getting a problem with this. Oh boy. Where are you at? Hold on, I don't know what the hell is going on. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what the hell happened, but we'll get it on in a minute. Okay, so I don't know what the hell happened, but we're going to play it back just a little bit to get this back in and on the record. So I apologize for that. You know, things do happen, but hey, we are live and we
was
are
intense.
on
The
control.
African delegation laid out a 42-page dossier titled Africa's Rightful Seat. It included historical records showing Africa's exclusion from key post-WW2 decisions, a breakdown of Africa's current contributions to global peacekeeping. Over 50% of UN missions involve African troops. The economic argument. Africa now holds 30% of the world's critical minerals. General Umoja reportedly told the council, open quote, "Without Africa's consent, no 21st century peace can stand. We will not be spectators in our own century." Close quote. Part 8. Comedy on the streets. Meanwhile, outside, New Yorkers were losing their minds. One cab driver was overheard yelling into his phone, "Bro, I think Africa just took over the UN. Should I drive to New Jersey?" A street hot dog vendor tried to sell African special hot dogs to the soldiers. No one bought them, but the photos went viral. One African soldier was spotted explaining to a group of tourists that no, they weren't invading. They were just protecting important people. The tourists asked if they could take selfies. The soldier said yes. 3 minutes later, the selfie was online with the caption, "Africa just liberated Manhattan." Hacked Part 9. The behind-the-scenes pressure. According to Protocol Black, before the meeting even began, African negotiators had already been contacted by European and US diplomats off the record, urging them to tone down the show of force. But the Africans refused. Open quote, "We came as 55 nations in one. We will leave with one answer, yes or no," close quote. It's rumored that if the answer is no, the AU is considering forming its own parallel global council, something that would fundamentally shake the UN's relevance. Part 10. Why now?
It would be the new UN. We wouldn't have to go to the white boy to do anything. Fuck him. All right? That's what that means.
Why did Africa choose this exact moment? 2 reasons. 1, global power shift. The world economy is tilting toward the global south. The BRICS expansion, Africa's Afro-gold currency plans, and China's deepening African partnerships have made the continent less dependent on Western approval. 2, Trump's moves. U.S. President Donald Trump's visa bond policy against Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, requiring a $15,000 bond for visa applicants, has been seen as deeply insulting. African leaders see this as proof the West still views Africa as a second-class player.
Let this soft
Hold on.
mineral melt in your mouth to rebuild your gums and teeth, and never need a dentist again. People...
Against Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, requiring a $15,000 bond for visa applicants, has been seen as deeply insulting. African leaders see this as proof the West still views Africa as a second-class player. Part 11. The optics. Let's be honest. The image of African soldiers standing guard outside the UN was pure cinematic gold. It was the first time many New Yorkers had ever seen African military uniforms up close, and not in a parade, but in a moment of high-stakes diplomacy. One observer noted, "It's like Africa brought the wedding party to the divorce hearing." Part 12. Potential consequences. If Africa secures a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, it will be a geopolitical earthquake. If not, the AU might escalate by limiting Western military access to African bases, expanding Africa-led peacekeeping forces outside UN control, deepening alliances with BRICS nations. Part 13. The closing scene. As the meeting wrapped up, the African delegation exited with the same slow, deliberate formation. Soldiers reformed their protective ring. Cameras clicked, and somewhere inside those glass UN walls, powerful people were wondering if they just witnessed the beginning of a new world order. Part
A
14,
new world order,
the insider's final word. Chairman Shadow summed it up perfectly. Open quote, "Today wasn't just a meeting, it was a warning shot. Africa is not outside the building anymore. It's standing at the door with the key in its hand." Close quote.
Wow. All right. We're down to the last two. And again, I apologize. I don't know what the hell happened to the video, but you guys can catch up to it later, I guess, if you feel inclined. But please do share, like, and comment about this video and about the YouTube stream, Straight Talk. So now let's take a look at the last two. This one is just one Africa army just took control of the Suez Canal. Do you know what that means? At one point in history, the black man ruled all of the 7 seas. We're on our way back. We're taking it back. We're not asking a motherfucker to do shit. Let's go.
One Africa army just took control of the Suez Canal. West completely cut off. By Takunda Maviga. Supreme Africa breaking news. Tisu Vanhu Vacho. The defenders of Africa are wide awake, and if you thought Africa was still just attending conferences and sipping bottled water while the West played Monopoly with our resources, nope. Today, Africa didn't just join the game. We flipped the board. Because according to an exclusive leak from not one, but 2 of our insiders, General Umoja and Protocol Black.
Hold on.
The African Union has just placed one Africa Army forces in joint control of the Suez Canal. That's right. The traffic jam of the century is about to get a brand new traffic cop, and he's wearing AU camouflage. Part 1. The secret meeting that changed everything. Last week, deep inside AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, a special emergency summit was called. Not on the public calendar. No press releases. Even the caterers had to sign NDAs. On the agenda, a single line in bold: Suez Corridor, African maritime sovereignty. According to General Umoja, the atmosphere in the room was tense. On one side of the table, Egypt's delegation led by Admiral Mahmoud Fathi, head of the Suez Canal Authority. On the other, AU chairperson João Lourenço, flanked by senior One Africa Army generals and naval commanders. Egypt opened with a cautious proposal: joint patrols along the Red Sea to combat piracy and safeguard cargo ships. But the AU team? They wanted more. They wanted direct operational presence inside the Suez Canal traffic control centers. They wanted AU flagships positioned at both Port Said in the north and Suez City in the south. And most of all, they wanted an iron guarantee that no African shipment could ever be blocked or delayed by external pressures. Translation.
So we're gonna go back a little bit and try to pull this one in.
Last week, deep inside AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, a special emergency summit was called. Not on the public calendar. No press releases. Even the caterers had to sign NDAs. On the agenda, a single line in bold: Suez Corridor, African maritime sovereignty. According to General Umoja, the atmosphere in the room was tense. On one side of the table, Egypt's delegation led by Admiral Mahmoud Fathi, head of the Suez Canal Authority. On the other, AU chairperson João Lourenço, flanked by senior One Africa Army generals and naval commanders. Egypt opened with a...
If this goes out again, I'm just going to call it a wrap. But I did put in the last video that you'll be able to see what that is. And it's actually African leaders sign new no white man tax law. So basically, we're just going to be kicking the shit out of white folks' asses and putting them on notice. Shut the fuck up, sit down, and do what we tell you. Period.
Cautious proposal: joint patrols along the Red Sea to combat piracy and safeguard cargo ships. But the AU team? They wanted more. They wanted direct operational presence inside the Suez Canal traffic control centers. They wanted AU flagships positioned at both Port Said in the north and Suez City in the south. And most of all, they wanted an iron guarantee that no African shipment could ever be blocked or delayed by external pressures. Translation: Western sanctions or political games. The Egyptians hesitated. Then, after 3 hours of closed-door bargaining, a handshake. The deal was signed under what insiders are calling the African Maritime Freedom Pact. Part 2. The first AU soldiers at the Suez. 2 days later, quietly and without fanfare, the first One Africa Army naval security team boarded a flight to Cairo. From there, military transport carried them to the canal. No parades, no loud announcements, just a new patch on the uniforms reading OAA, Maritime Command. Inside the Port Said control room, AU officers were briefed on traffic management, cargo scanning, and emergency procedures. But according to Protocol Black, these briefings were mostly formalities. The AU had already been tracking every ship entering the canal via satellite for over a year. One AU officer reportedly joked, "We've been watching this place from the sky. Now we're just here to drink their coffee and plug in our own computers."
Hold on.
Part 3. Why this move changes everything. For decades, the Suez Canal has been the world's shortcut between Europe and Asia. 12% of all global trade passes through it. Oil, gas, electronics, even your fancy smartphone parts, all sail through those waters. By securing a joint operational role, the AU has effectively